Hey everybody, this is Dave, and so now that we've all seen The Force Awakens, the biggest question that everyone is discussing is, what is Rey's backstory and who is her family? There's a variety of theories and opinions out there, so what I want to do in this video is talk about what is presented to us in The Force Awakens, and kind of by a process of elimination figure out what isn't Rey's backstory. So here we go. First off, let me just go through all the things that are presented in The Force Awakens about Rey. Alright, so Rey was left on Jakku by one or more family members when she was 5 years old. In Rey's vision, we see that Uncle Plut is holding her arm and telling her to be quiet, as Rey yells, "Come back," to a departing ship which presumably contains one or more of Rey's family members. Rey grows up on Jakku as a scavenger. Jakku is an insignificant desert planet that was the battleground for a large battle between the New Republic and the remains of the Galactic Empire. After this battle, a peace treaty was formed between the New Republic and the Empire, which went on to become the First Order. While this planet is quite barren, apparently the battleground wreckage attracted a colony of scavengers who are still picking through the wreckage almost 30 years later. But we see from Rey's daily findings that the pickings are probably getting kind of slim after 30 years. We also know of another settlement on Jakku where Lor San Tekka is located. The settlement is called Tuanul. It was a settlement by members of the Church of the Force who wanted to be secluded to be more in touch with nature and the Force. Tuanul seems pretty close geographically to Rey's scavenger settlement. We know that Rey is about 19 or 20 years old at the time of The Force Awakens. Rey suggests to BB-8 that where she comes from is confidential. She tells BB-8 that she is waiting for her family. She is counting the days on the wall inside her AT-AT home. She is obviously a good person, but she's no Ned Flanders. She helps BB-8, but then tells him that he can only stay with her for one night. And she enjoys Finn's company, but she is frequently annoyed by him. And when she's fighting, she gets this look on her face. Yikes. She's a skilled fighter and carries a staff as a weapon with her everywhere she goes. She's very tech savvy, which makes sense since she needs to know the spaceships inside and out as a scavenger to know what to look for. She is good at piloting, she is intrigued by the Resistance, and she is apparently interested in the history of the Rebel Alliance. She even has a handmade doll of a Rebel pilot that perhaps she made herself, and her own Rebel pilot helmet that she enjoys wearing for fun from time to time. She has heard of Luke Skywalker, but thinks that he's just a myth or a tall tale. She's also heard about the Millennium Falcon, even though she did not know that the ship Uncle Plut had was actually the Falcon itself. And she has also heard of Han Solo, not as a war hero, but as a smuggler. She knows of the Kessel Run, but heard it was done in 14 parsecs instead of 12. Rey is powerful with the Force. Without training, she was able to block Kylo Ren's mind probe and even make her way into his mind, discovering his fear that he would never be as powerful as Darth Vader. She was able to use Force persuasion on a stormtrooper. She was able to summon Luke's lightsaber to her hand when Kylo Ren could not. She was able to clear her mind and use the Force to fight more skillfully against Kylo Ren. Rey also has a vision showing events related to Luke and to herself after touching Luke's old lightsaber. Maz Kanata perceives that Rey knows deep down in her heart that her family is never coming back for her. Maz suggests that Rey could help Luke return from exile, and she says that the Force is calling to her. So with those kind of as the main things that were shown to us about Rey, let's kind of go through some of the ideas and theories out there and see how they fit. So the first question that comes to mind in regards to Rey's family is, why would they abandon her at 5 years old? Most opinions seem to favor the explanation that it was probably to protect her, which could be the case, but then the next question is, why would they leave her with an uncompassionate, dishonest thief? I'm talking about Uncle Plut. We see how Plut has no affection toward Rey, and we see how he is kind of stingy with his trades. We also know that Plut stole the Millennium Falcon, albeit from another thief, but still. Plut even tried to steal BB-8 from Rey herself. You might think that perhaps Plut and Rey have kind of a Watto and Anakin relationship, where Plut is hard and tough toward Rey, but still has a soft spot for her. After all, Rey is familiar with the work Plut has done on the Millennium Falcon, and she has at least discussed it with him, and it feels like maybe she's even worked on it with him. But that really isn't the case with their relationship. So there's actually a scene in the novelization of The Force Awakens. In this scene, Uncle Plut tracks the Falcon to Maz Kanata's castle, and he confronts Rey there, and Rey actually attempts to shoot Plut in the face, not realizing that the safety is on. And then Plut shows Rey where the safety is on the blaster, and then Chewie steps in and actually rips Uncle Plut's arm off. I wonder if that'll be like a deleted scene on the Blu-ray. What it does do is it shows that Rey and Uncle Plut do not care for each other in the slightest. Rey was willing to shoot Plut in the face. It's obvious that Plut was no guardian to Rey. If anything, he was a potential threat to her and her safety. So leaving Rey with Uncle Plut seems actually very unsafe. I mean, Plut seems like the kind of guy that would surely sell off Rey or her location in a heartbeat if he realized what or who she was. Some people have conjectured that perhaps the nearby presence at the settlement of Tuanul of Lor San Tekka, who was a member of the Church of the Force and apparently a friend of Princess Leia, might mean that he was keeping an eye on Rey all these years, similar to Obi-Wan Kenobi exiling himself on Tatooine in order to be close to Luke. But there's no evidence to support this idea, really. We don't know how long Tekka has been on Jakku, and Tekka himself says that he has traveled a lot. Some would point out that it's too much of a coincidence that he's on Jakku, kind of near where Rey is. But it seems to me that Lor San Tekka stationed himself on Jakku, probably because there was already a Church of the Force colony there before Rey was ever even there. He also may have gone to Jakku in order to try to locate the map to the first Jedi Temple within the wreckage, a map which we learned was originally in possession of the Empire. I mean, Lucasfilm in future films or books could reveal that Tekka was watching over Rey on Jakku, but as things are now, there really is no reason to believe that that was the case. So really, as far as we know, Rey was left with no guardian on a barren wasteland of a planet. Whether or not it was for protection, it still feels like neglect. I mean, Leia was hidden successfully from Vader, and she was raised by loving, well-to-do, responsible adoptive parents. So why couldn't they do something like that to protect Rey? And what does that mean for Rey? Well, to me it means one of two things. Either Rey's family member who left her on Jakku was irresponsible, neglectful, or just a plain bad parent, or it means that they were under extreme duress and had absolutely no time to do anything else but leave Rey with Uncle Plutt. Kind of like in the movie Kung Fu Panda 2, where Poe's mother hides baby Poe in a vegetable cart because she really has no other choice, and she then draws her chasers away into the woods. Basically, Rey's family was perhaps being hunted or something like that, and their pursuers were hot on their heels, and there was no time for a better situation, so they left Rey at the nearest semi-suitable location and told her to wait there, planning on returning for her as soon as reasonably possible, but probably something happened that didn't allow that. Maybe they were captured or killed or whatever. In either case, bad family or dead family, it makes sense and justifies why Maz Kanata would say that they were never coming back for Rey. Alright, so now how does this affect the most popular theory out there about Rey's parents? That is, of course, that Luke Skywalker is Rey's father. Well, Luke can very well be her dad. After all, Rey is strong with the Force. She's a natural pilot. She was drawn to Luke's old lightsaber. The trailer strongly hinted that they were related, and so on. But what it does mean is that Luke almost definitely was not the one who left Rey on Jakku, and he actually probably wasn't a part of Rey's life when she was a child. This is evident from several things. The fact that Rey's family is never returning, even though they promised to. The huge detail that Rey has no personal memory of Luke Skywalker, and she believes that he was only a myth. The fact that neither Luke nor Rey seem to recognize each other at the end of the film, and the fact that none of Luke's family and or friends, neither Chewie, Han, Leia, or Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, recognize Rey. Now, some people are theorizing that Rey was a young student of Luke's Jedi Order, and that Luke rescued her from the Knights of Ren when Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. They think that this explains why she is able to use Force persuasion and a lightsaber. A lot of people think that perhaps Luke Skywalker used the Force to wipe Rey's memory as part of her witness protection program, and this explains why Rey doesn't recognize anyone that would have been familiar to Luke's daughter and or student. Now, I think this is kind of an idea out of left field. There's nothing in The Force Awakens that sets up Rey having a memory wipe, and the very idea kind of reeks of a Frozen-level plot contrivance to me. The memory wipe theory doesn't make a lot of sense because Rey clearly has memories of her family and of their promise to return. If Rey had forgotten her short history, remember she was only 5, and who she was, then her determination to wait for her family wouldn't make much sense. And when BB-8 tells Rey where he came from is confidential, Rey responds, "Confidential? Really? Me too. Big secret." Which could imply that Rey remembers more than what some people are theorizing. Also, a pick and choose memory wipe using the Force, as in, let's remove all memories containing the keyword Luke. It would just reek of a convenience, and again, it would be just like the trolls from the movie Frozen. Of course, it's not impossible that there's some sort of memory wiping in there, but it would be kind of a cheap plot device in my opinion. I think that the reason that some people are kind of latching on to this idea of a memory wipe is because it's the only way that they can rationalize the backstory that they want to see, because without a memory wipe, it eliminates the possibility that Rey is a former student of Skywalker. Remember, she thinks Skywalker is a myth. Some people think that the part of Rey's vision involving the Knights of Ren and Luke mourning in front of the burning Jedi Temple, that those are actually repressed memories of Rey. But if those were memories, then why would they include a scene of Bespin in that vision? Why have the vision be 99% about Rey with a little glimpse of Bespin of some reason? Well, there is no reason, because Rey's vision was clearly a combination of events, some related to Luke and some related to her. So on that note, it brings me to my next point, the timeline. So Rey was 5 when she was left on Jakku, and in The Force Awakens she's about 19 or 20. With that in mind, I actually don't believe that Rey's abandonment had anything to do with Kylo Ren's betrayal of Luke. If those events are connected, that puts Kylo Ren's betrayal 15 years before this movie. Kylo Ren's age is 30 at most, probably 29, since you have to factor in some time for Leia to conceive and go full term after the Return of the Jedi. So that would mean that Kylo Ren would have been about 14 when he betrayed Luke. I suppose that is possible for a 14-year-old Jedi Padawan, but it seems a little silly to me, especially when you consider that Kylo Ren is still somewhat lacking in his training at about 29 years old, so it kind of seems dubious that he would have defeated Luke's school 15 years earlier. Also, the man inside the Kylo Ren costume in Rey's vision is clearly the same size as present-day Kylo Ren, probably because it's Adam Driver. Were that truly a 14-year-old Kylo Ren, he probably would have been noticeably shorter and or scrawnier. That could be nitpicking, but, it's all about attention to detail, right? Now, some people have pointed out that in the novel, the moment when Han sees Kylo's face after he takes his mask off, the novel says this: "For the first time, Han saw the face of his son as a grown man, and it jolted him." Many people are assuming that this means that Ben Solo became Kylo Ren at a very young age. But it's not like Han necessarily was with Ben the day before he became Kylo. Leia talks about sending him away to Luke. Luke's Jedi school was apparently away from Han and Leia. It's like a boarding school, probably. Han and Leia may have gone several years without seeing their son before he turned to the dark side. This even seems to be something that probably added to Kylo's contempt for his parents. Leia even says that it was when she sent Ben away to Luke that she lost him. Also, the quote could just mean that the last time Han saw Ben's face, it was still very boyish and young looking. That kind of jargon could be easily applied to a situation where the last time Han saw Ben, he was like 20 or something, and now he's like 29 and he truly looks like a grown man. That said, I don't think Kylo Ren officially became Kylo Ren until his late teens or early 20s or something. So to me, this means that Rey was probably abandoned before Kylo Ren betrayed Luke, and that the destruction of Luke's new Jedi Order has little to do with Rey's abandonment. Also, if Rey was the sole surviving student of Luke's Jedi Order, then Snoke and Kylo's conversation about Rey's ability with the Force probably would have been a lot different. They likely would have speculated over the possibility that this girl could be the last student of Skywalker that escaped their clutches 15 years ago. Instead, they're both perplexed about where this girl came from, and Snoke doesn't even really trust Kylo about how powerful Rey is. He says, "If what you say about this girl is true, bring her to me." Snoke and Kylo are clearly unaware of who she is, and they don't even really seem to have any real suspicions of who she is. And some might argue that Kylo Ren does have suspicions over Rey's identity. When he first sees her in the woods, he says, "The girl I've heard so much about." I've first wondered about that statement too. I wondered, whoa, who told Kylo so much about Rey? But upon rewatching the film, it's become clear to me that Kylo is just referring to the fact that every time he gets a report about the location of BB-8, there's always a mention of a girl accompanying the droid. So he keeps hearing about this girl that is helping the droid, and that is frustrating to him because, unlike Finn, Kylo has no idea who this mysterious girl is. And then he finally gets to see her, and he's like, oh, the girl I've heard so much about. Now, going back to the novel again, some people think that Kylo figures out who Rey is based on a line in the novel. So in the novelization, right after Rey uses the Force to pull the lightsaber into her hand, Kylo mutters, "It is you." This line could imply that Kylo had a suspicion of who Rey was, and her summoning of the lightsaber simply confirmed it for him. But again, I don't know if that's the case. We saw with Kylo Ren that Lucasfilm did not have the characters act a certain way in order to hide Kylo Ren's parentage, just to build up suspense and create a big reveal later on. So completely hiding the suspicions of Kylo, Snoke, Han, or Leia about Rey just to create a big moment later on would feel kind of gimmicky and kind of forced. So in the case of Kylo Ren saying, "It is you," and only in the novel, mind you, if he is indeed confirming a suspicion, then it feels kind of cheap that they never had Kylo indicate his suspicions in the first place, not through his face or through his actions or anything previous to that point. Therefore, in this situation, I actually think Kylo Ren isn't realizing who Rey is, he's realizing what she is. Now, the thing that The Force Awakens did establish with Kylo and Snoke is that the two of them sensed an awakening in the Force. It was something that concerned them, and it's what increased their urgency to stop the Resistance from finding Luke Skywalker. So, while we never get any indication of Kylo wondering about Rey's identity, we do see that he and Snoke have been curious about this awakening in the Force. So, when Kylo sees just how powerful Rey is with the Force, that even untrained, and she was untrained, Kylo perceived this and said it to Snoke flat out. He says she is untrained but more powerful than she knows. So, that an untrained girl could outdo his own communication with the Force and summon the lightsaber when he could not. I think it became evident to Kylo Ren that this girl was the awakening that they had sensed. And that's probably exactly what Kylo meant in the novel when he said, "It is you." And mind you, he only said it in the novel, not in the movie. Another thing that is worth mentioning, I think, is the fact that Rey has a thick British accent. So you could argue that her accent is evidence that Rey was raised by one or more people with that same accent. So at least one of her parents probably had to have an accent like that. Of course, that doesn't eliminate Luke as a potential parent because Rey's mother could have had an accent like that. But it probably does eliminate any Han and Leia theories that are out there. Some people think that Rey's accent actually works well with the theory out there that she's a Kenobi. Who knows? Maybe. Alright, so then we have the fact that Rey is drawn to Anakin and Luke's old lightsaber. The simplest explanation for this, combined with the fact that Maz Kanata goes out of her way to point out the lightsaber's heritage in this connoting way, is that she's drawn to the lightsaber because she's Luke's daughter, probably. People who think that Rey is a Kenobi point out that Obi-Wan actually kept the lightsaber in his possession for longer than Luke or Anakin. So the lightsaber may have more of a connection to Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan's voice is heard in Rey's vision, speaking directly to her, saying, "Rey, these are your first steps." So that could mean something too. But then there's perhaps the idea that the Force is simply guiding Rey toward Luke as part of her future destiny, kind of like how Obi-Wan guided Luke to Yoda. Perhaps it's even Obi-Wan who's trying to guide Rey to Luke, not because of any family ties, but just because it's her destiny. Alright, now, also out there is the idea that Rey could maybe be another child of the Force like Anakin was. Most everyone has been comparing Rey to Luke, probably because of their story elements that are similar, but if you think about it, she seems a lot more like Anakin when it comes to her natural Force abilities. She's an inexplicably good pilot. She is also a natural mechanic, and the level of her Force powers are definitely more in the range of a young Anakin than that of a young Luke. So maybe the Force just creates a super kid every now and then to balance the Force? Maybe? Probably not. There's also a popular theory based on Revenge of the Sith that either Darth Plagueis or Darth Sidious created Anakin. Palpatine tells Anakin that Darth Plagueis the Wise not only learned how to use the Force to keep other people alive, but that he even learned how to use the Force to create life. So the implication is that either Plagueis or Palpatine manipulated the Force to impregnate Shmi Skywalker and create Anakin. Now, if Snoke does turn out to be Plagueis, or maybe even a student or the son of Plagueis, then there is the idea that maybe Snoke created Rey using the Force, and Rey's mother figured this out and hid her on Jakku. The thing that makes me doubt this is Snoke's disinterest upon hearing about a girl who is powerful with the Force. If Snoke was tied to Rey's origin, I feel like he would have reacted or paused and reflected at the news of a 19-year-old girl who is stronger than Kylo Ren with the Force, but we don't get any of that from him, so I doubt that's the case. But also, going off the similarities between Anakin and Rey, there's now this theory out there that Rey is a reincarnation of Anakin. I think the big flaw in this theory is that the afterlife in Star Wars has already been addressed, and Anakin's soul goes on to become a spirit or a ghost. And while I'm murky on why there needs to be a technique involved in becoming a Force ghost that apparently Qui-Gon had to figure out, it's obvious that reincarnation is not the natural order of things in Star Wars. And any reincarnation would have to be the result of some sort of deliberate Frankenstein-type experiment or a Voldemort-type sorcery or something like that, which I think would just be weird. And it also wouldn't make much sense considering Anakin's ending in The Return of the Jedi. Another theory out there is that Captain Phasma is her mother, and that upon discovering Rey's Force powers, she couldn't bring herself to turn Rey into the First Order, but her being still a neglectful and selfish First Order person decided to abandon Rey, and she decided to dump Rey in a barren wasteland. Some people think that Phasma's quickness to lower the Starkiller shields could have been a sign of her own disillusionment with the First Order, something that could have started with the bitter feelings that grew from being forced to choose between her daughter and the First Order a while back. The thing that doesn't totally jive with this idea is that whoever left Rey on Jakku clearly had the intention of returning for her. Rey trusts that her family will come back, even when deep down she knows that they won't. Let me mention something from the novel again. In Rey's vision, she hears a voice referred to as that voice, implying that it's familiar. And the voice says to Rey, "Stay here, sweetheart. I will come back for you." Now that sounds to me like the voice of a mother. I actually think that the family member who left Rey on Jakku was her mother, and that she never came back, most likely because she died, not because she just decided not to. There's also, of course, the possibility that Rey's parents are all new characters to the Star Wars universe. Maybe they will be revealed and we will discover why they left Rey, or maybe they will forever remain a mystery. Perhaps not revealing who Rey's parents are makes total sense because her character's journey so far has been all about letting go of the past and embracing the future. So perhaps Luke becomes her father in all but name, and her biological parents don't even really matter. So who is Rey's father? Maybe Luke? But don't be so sure. There was a video that was made by John Campea from Collider Movie Talk, and I'll link the video in the description, but essentially he points out that Maz Kanata says to Rey, "You already know the truth. Whomever you are waiting for on Jakku, they are never coming back. But," she says, "there's someone who still could." So essentially Maz was saying, whoever you are waiting for, who we the audience know to be the family Rey talked about, that they're never coming back. But, Maz says, there's someone who still could, referring to Luke. And in the novel, Maz says it a little bit differently, actually. Something to the effect of, "But there's someone who still could, with your help." Now, John Campea in his video took this to mean that there is a distinction between Luke and Rey's family. And that may be the case, but more specifically, I think what it does is it sets a distinction between Luke and the family member who left Rey on Jakku. Really, I'm getting more and more convinced that Luke may indeed be her father, but the only person who actually knows that Luke and Rey are father and daughter is Rey's mother, whom I'm thinking is probably dead, hence never coming back. Anyway, getting back to Rey's interaction with Maz, Maz is essentially telling her, "I'm sorry to break it to you, but whoever you're waiting for isn't coming back. But you're needed here now. We need you to bring back Luke Skywalker, and you will find the sense of belonging you need with your new friends and with Luke, who might be related to you, or maybe not." But with that all said, really I think the only remaining possibilities would be that Luke is her father, but an estranged father, one that never knew that she was born, or that her parents don't matter, and we'll never find out who they were. Those are kind of the ones that I'm leaning most towards. I do have a video that I'm going to put up about my version of what I think her backstory could be. So if you want to see that, go ahead and subscribe. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of all the theories? Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments. I know there's lots of opinions out there. Go ahead and put your own theories. Go ahead and check out some of my other videos. And that's it. I'm out.